I'm starting to get the hang of this. I have just completed 11 new blocking. The blocking is not made yet, but the euphoria is still there because we are at the stage ready to make the blocking. So that is one reason to celebrate already.
The blocking. These pieces of wood sit on the beam shelf and fit in between the ends of the deck beams. They're there to prevent flexing of the deck or movement of the beams, basically just to stiffen everything up and avoid cracks or warps forming. Most of our old blocking had suffered from rot, so now that our new deck beams are in place, it's time to make new blocking to match.
Here on the starboard side, I have a few pieces of blocking made already. It was a time-consuming and fiddly process. So why is it difficult? The difficulty lies within the angles. It's so many angles. One angle is the beam shelf to the hull, and as we run from stern to bow, that angle changes. So I'll demonstrate it. At the stern, it flares somewhat out towards midships. It comes in, and then here at the chain plates, it even curves inward a little bit, and towards the bow, it flares out and out and out and out. And the other angle is given by the beams. Both ends of the blocking here, they meet the beams at different angles. So yeah, every blocking is custom made, and it takes quite a while. Now, what am I looking for in a good piece of blocking? I am trying to eliminate wiggle room. A boat can always flex to a certain degree, going up a wave, going down a wave, the sail pulling here, the keel pulling there. So with the blocking, we are minimizing movement of the beams in this orientation. Or at least, if that happens minimally, it's doing it all together to a very small degree, because the blocking stiffen them up and keep them in place. It sounds a bit crazy because this is to such a minimal extent, but still, that's more or less what the blocking do. Also, of course, the plywood decks sit on the blocking. Of course, they are supported by the beams mostly, but at the end of the hull here, they have a nice place to rest also on the blocking. Another thing is, as we are building up the bulwarks, they are sitting exactly over top of the blocking, so it is crucial. And as I was making these, I was trying to be as accurate as possible with them, of course, and leave no gaps whatsoever. But we want to coat them with epoxy, so after remembering that, I went back and I took off a tiny amount more, and that's to allow for the blocking to be coated with epoxy. Every piece of wood that we're putting in the boat is getting coated.
The angle Aladino measured here was the one between the beam shelf and the hull. Remember, this angle changes from bow to stern, but it doesn't change too drastically in the space of a few blocks. So Aladino is cutting out a piece that's just long enough to make 5 or 6 blocks, all with the same beam shelf to hull angle. That angle will be slightly adjusted block by block, but this is a good starting point. Aladino finished off the cuts with a hand saw so that he didn't have to overcut with the circular saw blade.
Alright, let's continue right away. Next step is thickness planer. This is a little too much thickness. We are losing a bit of wood, it's a pity. I'm taking off a good 1/4 inch. If we were doing this in a different carpentry or boat yard, I would do the initial step with a bandsaw, because then I could save that 1/4 inch and reuse it. But with the tools at hand, there is no tool that would do this accurately enough that is worth risking the wood that we need and saving a little bit. So there's always some waste involved. Yeah, 1/4 inch. So that's what we're getting rid of right now. Will be installed like this. This is the hull, this is the beam shelf. It means that this edge here can be rounded over. And now I do this right away, as it's easier to do these steps on the entire piece of wood instead of on every single block once it's made. This old planer is so elegant. Only metal, back like in the old days. It is from the old days. But I don't do complete rounding with the electric planer. I just take off material, and now I do it with the hand plane. That should do it. It's just to eliminate fitting problems. Now I run over it with sandpaper, preparation for coating. It's nice to coat without sharp edges in the way. Here it is. Another thing that we're super excited about since we found this big nice slab of sapele is to have continuous grain running from one visible point to the next, which is usually divided by bulkheads. So I'll try to cut it up in sections, but as there is waves and differences in grain and there is these stains, they will be visible in continuity. So I'm pretty excited about that. Another little compromise that we're doing here is actually to really stick with the curvature of the hull. It would be better to do sections that are shorter, like 3 blockings at a time, because the angle of the beam shelf to the hull changes within like 3 blockings. But I'm doing a bit of a compromise here because, as you guys saw, it's so much easier to prepare a 7-foot section instead of cutting 3.5-foot sections at a time with all these steps involved. But I've made it a little taller than it should be, so I can still adjust minimally with the hand plane at the very end. And on how to proceed here, the one that I am preferring and taking on right now is using a little piece of wood. I stick it to what cut I'm focusing on. Right now I'll try to make this cut here. And as I lay this one in place, I can see where the gap is. The gap is bigger in the rear. That means I will be adjusting the miter, the compound miter, towards the front. That's the fiddly part of the process, that now I go over, I adjust, I cut, I come back, I compare, I go back, I readjust, and like that I come tiny steps closer. Not only do I have to adjust this angle, I also sometimes have to adjust the miter angle. I don't know those yet, the terms, but also this angle, not just that one. Was a tiny touch too much. Alright, pretty happy with that. Now I can make this cut over here. So one cut is taken care of on the section that I will focus on later though, and then I continue working my way forward. For accurate things, I have to work with metric. I'm sorry. Now I just continue in the same fashion.
So the work continued. As you can tell, this is a time-consuming project, and it will take many days until all the blocks are created. Next, they'll have to be epoxied and then installed. There are always little details to work out, but when these pieces of mahogany get coated with epoxy and varnish, their deep red color contrasted with the pale yellow of the beams will be a sight to behold. And as with everything on this boat, it's a long road, but the rewards are starting to compile and feel really good. Every now and then we'll get comments from folks congratulating us on our positive mindset throughout a project like this. And really, thank you for those comments. They always mean a lot to us. Although we don't always reply, we do read every single comment. But to be honest, maintaining drive and positivity in the face of such a project isn't always easy, and we don't always succeed, although those moments aren't usually captured on camera. Some days just feel frustrating and long. Some days we just need a break. But we've learned that the key to a successful project isn't always having 100% motivation and drive. That's not within human nature. The key is simply being determined, and also being aware that having those slow days is a part of being alive, not a sign of failure or weakness. Not that this is a bad day, by the way. This is actually shaping up to be a pretty good one.
I'm starting to get the hang of this. I have just completed 11 new blocking, so we have 22 of 60 now. So the next step is planing them down. So as I put it in place, I lower the plywood sheets to the line where I have to plane to, more or less like this. And the same on the other end. And now I kind of have two levels where I see stop planing, and instead everything that is protruding needs to go. It's just a little visual aid. This is a really mean example. Look right in the middle how the grain changes. Here I should be planing from this side, and here I should be planing from this side. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's alright. Plane is pretty sharp and it's doing alright, and we're already almost there. Oh no, gotta go a bit lower here. And this table is a little wonky, but it's better than nothing. One done. So, shall we go up and test this one, just to show you the entire process? So here we go with 10p, 10 port. Now it is flush, it's all on the same surface, and that's exactly what we want from it. And now I do all the others. You can still see 3 in place, and that is because these need a little extra service. It's good that I have them a bit higher than they have to be, because I have to make corrections to the bottom instead of to the top to make them really sit flush on the beam shelf and against the hull. That's why I make them a bit proud, because then I can make these custom adjustments to everyone. And that is because the beam shelf really is not anything smooth or flat. Sometimes the layers of fiberglass, there's an edge, so it's higher on one side, and the hull is also a little wavy, so I can address that, and once it fits to the bottom and the side, then I take the extra off on the top. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do now, but that's so cool. We have 11 more done very soon.
After several days of work, the port and starboard side blocks were mostly finished. And here, we'll leave you for the week. Next week, we will make the remaining blocks, coat them in epoxy, play some tunes, and marvel at how good things are starting to look. As always, a huge thank you for watching. An extra big thanks to our patrons for making these episodes possible. If you're interested in joining Patreon and getting real-time updates into our projects and whereabouts, you can do so for as little as $2 a month. It's what keeps the channel alive, and there's lots of little bonuses and more personal communication over there. An extra big thank you to these folks who go above and beyond every week and every month to make sure this channel keeps being produced, and we'll see you all next week.